Greetings and welcome back to the channel. For the first time coming across my channel, please remember to subscribe. As you can see, today is a cloudy day and it's slightly drizzly, but anyhow, let's stay positive. I come here today to talk to you again about the influence of Marcus Garvey, meaning our individual such as Marcus Garvey can make such a great impression on past world leaders and world leaders of today. So I come across a video recently. It's about a week old or so, or maybe less than that, of the present Prime Minister of Barbados speaking at the African Union. And I would like to bring this video to you so we could watch it together. She will talk about many different things in her speech. She will mention Bob Marley, His Majesty Haile Selassie, and she will mention Marcus Garvey, and she will also mention unification of Africa. So with no further ado, let's get into this video, watch together, listen together, and come back and have a little conversation. All right.
Appreciation goes to Her Excellency Mia Amor Mottley, Prime Minister of Barbados and Chair of the CARICOM Authority. You have traveled all the way from home to another home to join us in today's launch. May I now invite you, Your Excellency, to come to the podium and address this august assembly.
I stand here clothed in the spirit of the battles of Adwa, conscious that it was that battle within 24 hours that shook the confidence of the powers of Europe, but inspired the people of Africa and the children of the African diaspora that good would prevail over evil and light over darkness, but only in the context of our unity. I stand here conscious that it was that battle that forged the beginnings of Pan-Africanism that eventually led to the movement for independence and the destruction of the colonial powers to give us not full development and power, but the first steps of political independence. I stand here conscious and buffeted by the dreams and works of the great Pan-African pioneers, and conscious that as a children of the Caribbean, we have long dreamt for the moment of unity with our brothers and sisters of Africa, a division that was secured by those whose success and survival depended on separation of us rather than on the ability for us to act as one common people. Our relationship, you can say, was embryonic, but regrettably, as long as it has been and as related as we have been, it has been sporadic. And it is up to us as the children of independent states to determine whether the history of separation shall be our future or whether the spirit of Adwa can be our inspiration to confront the challenges of a new world. Yes, I stand here as a daughter of Africa. I stand here equally as a proud Prime Minister of Barbados, a country which is the first landmass that you reach after you leave this great continent of Africa. A country which became a hub for the wrong reasons, but today I come to Ethiopia to share with you in the Africa Union that we can be a hub now for the right reasons between our two peoples. I stand here as the proud chairman of CARICOM, the Caribbean community, recognizing that as a member of the 6th region of Africa, we have come to reclaim our Atlantic destiny. We have come to ensure that the very futures of our people are different and will not once again be determined by a middleman who will ensure that the Middle Passage is one that sees our people at the bottom of the ocean's floor of the Atlantic or in the fields of the plantations of the Caribbean, but instead that it will be a future that sees our people, hears our people, feels our people, and that will determine in future that it is we who shall forge the manner in which we cooperate, integrate, and invest, rather than simply being victims of a past history. I stand here equally as the chair of the V20, 70 countries across the world that are climate vulnerable, 40% of whom come from this great continent of Africa, recognizing that it is only through unity that we can confront the existential crisis of our generation, that of the climate crisis. The Secretary General of the United Nations has already laid out, ably so, many of the iniquities that we continue to face in spite of political independence. It was His Majesty Haile Selassie who popularized and told us that there shall be no first-class or second-class citizens, words popularized by Bob Marley, learnt by all of our people without appropriately recognizing the context in which he spoke and the mission which must be ours for generations until it is achieved. He told us that there would be war if there were first-class and second-class citizens. He told us that there would be war if the color of our skin was more significant than the color of our eyes. And we see here in the continent the continued descent into conflicts, born out of ethnicity differences, born out of a mad grab for resources, not invariably for our own benefit, but for the benefit of others who seek to use our people as pawns in the determination of their own future. But we stand here as proud people, and we have enough among ourselves to know the difference between right and wrong, and to forge a future that is not for a few, but for the many. Indeed, as the world confronts the climate crisis, it is the poorest of the poor who remain the most vulnerable to floods and droughts and hurricanes. It is the poorest of the poor, and soon to be the middle of the middle, who will no longer be able to access insurance and therefore to be able to forge ahead with development if we do not make changes. We have examples of a partnership that have worked for us, not just from the spirit of Adwa and the conquest and the rise of the Pan-Africanist movement in our history, but within recent times. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it was the African Union, under the leadership then of President Ramaphosa, and with the assistance of Dr. Tedros of the WHO, that recognized that the Caribbean, which was being marginalized by denial of access to basic therapeutics, basic medical equipment, to vaccines, that we should not be left as pariahs on the global landscape, but that our brothers and sisters in Africa would bring us through the Africa Medical Supplies platform to be able to ensure that we could secure for our own people. It was with the solidarity of many of you in the Africa Union that the Bridgetown Initiative has been able to take root and to make a case for a more modern and a fairer system that allows us to be able to access finance and to be able to put in place measures that allow us to be able to pause our repayment of debt during the period of necessity for rebuilding after horrific climatic events. We have seen how partnership helps us. We do not need any more evidence. What is required of us is to lead the way to peace, to prosperity, and to justice. And the reparations which we call for the international community to be able to recognize, first and foremost, with that which we ask from each of our children. Say sorry. Say sorry. And mean it. And after you say sorry, recognize that the future of the world is not possible without the stability of Africa and its diaspora. For as long as hypocrisy and double standards remain, it will be impossible to secure stability and peace in any nation across the earth. The reparations that we call for, beyond sorry, must be for fair access and development and compensation, because we each started the journey of independence with a chronic deficit. A deficit of resources, a deficit of fairness, a deficit of opportunity. And it is up to us, many of us in the second and third generation of independence, to be able to frame out fairly, in a mature conversation, what those reparations must look like if we are to attain justice and to inspire the young people of this world that good must always prevail over evil. But it is not only the reparations that we ask from the international community, because we ourselves must repair the damage that was foisted on us. The notion that transit visas, begging for them, must be the lot of our people in order to move across this world cannot be something that gives us satisfaction. To go east and to go west, we are first forced to go north. It is not right. And it is not beyond the heads of government and heads of state, of the region, of the Caribbean community, and of the continent of Africa, to determine that we must stop talking about, but simply do what is necessary to build the air bridges and sea bridges to guarantee that we control our destiny. I ask us to reflect on this because it is this simple act, apart from our music and our culture and our food, that will guarantee that it is not simply heads of government and heads of state that will meet in Accra or Bridgetown, but it is ordinary people who will be able to trade and to move from the closest point of Dakar to the closest point of Bridgetown, to be able to open up the opportunities that technically ought to be available not just simply through the Africa Free Trade Area or the CARICOM single market and economy, but through the combined opportunities provided by both. I ask us equally to recognize that in an era where AI is threatening to redefine what humanity can do and even if we can survive, that it is not ours to be the victims once again of technology as we were with gunpowder, but it is for us to help shape the future of the world, because more often than not it is Africa and its people who have brought the humanizing forces to bear on civilization. And if we are to be the cradle of civilization, then we are to be the protectors of people and planet, of humanity, as we go forward. And some watching on may say, how? And I say, how not? How not does a continent that has 40% of the world's minerals not be in charge of helping to secure the destiny and stability of the planet? How not does the numbers of our two communities, who constitute a third of the world's states, not act in singular purpose to forge the kind of world that we want and to be able to ensure that the institutions that deny access to us, to hear our voices as reflective of the continent and of the small island developing states of the world? How do we not secure that admission, which is not only just, but a moral imperative if the world is to have stability in this 21st century? My friends, I ask you, how do we not secure this victory when 1 in every 5 and possibly 1 in every 4 persons on the planet will come from this continent and its diaspora. Those who lead today have a moral imperative, not just to our citizens in our own countries, but above all else, to unity. The spirit of Adwa demands of us that we recognize that even in the face of the greatest technology being foisted upon us, that we can rise and win if we act in unity. This has been a message not given by our generation alone, but by previous generations of African and Caribbean leaders. But we ask ourselves, why does it elude us? And the answer comes not from outside, but only from within. When I speak of the USA with affection, I do not only want to speak of that which is known in the Americas. I want to speak about that which ought to have been possible if the 1884 Berlin talks did not take place. The possibility of the United States of Africa, which is as diverse as India, which is as diverse as China in terms of ethnicity and language and religion, but which is entirely possible if we see not ourselves first, but we see the unity of ourselves together. This may be the cry of a naive and romantic daughter of Africa. But if that is the case, I prefer to die being a naive and romantic daughter of Africa than one who is cynical and one who is daunted by the actions and power of others. We know what it is to stand in unity with you to fight apartheid and to fight for the liberation of the peoples of Africa. For when President Castro stood to send people from his own country to Southern Africa to free your people, it was in my own country that the planes refueled, ensuring that that battle was possible. And when 100 years ago, almost, a Barbadian man and woman left our nation and left the United States to come here, Arnold and Mignon Ford, he wrote the anthem and lyrics of the anthem of the United Negro Improvement Association, UNIA, and his wife dared to establish a co-educational school here in Ethiopia, ensuring that boys and girls could receive education in a time and at a time when war was dominating the global landscape. They chose to see light rather than darkness. I ask us today, in tangible terms, that will allow our people to travel, that will allow us to pool our investments to ensure that the people of Africa not be denied the electricity that is so necessary as a platform for participation in the new world. I ask us not only to pool that investment, but to also ensure that we pool our voices, because there is too much division in this world today. There is too much war and there is too much conflict. And we know what precipitates and causes that. If we leave Addis Ababa with the commitment that the world is not going to be safe without a prosperous and stable Africa, then we understand what is the moral imperatives we must undertake in each of our countries to secure that unity of purpose and to secure ultimately the saving of the people and planet. I ask you today to recognize that, and I thank Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed for agreeing that the first in-face summit of CARICOM and the Africa Union should take place here in Addis Ababa on the 7th of September of this year of our Lord. By that simple act, we build on the inaugural summit which took place virtually in 2021. But more importantly, we seek to regularize and to establish as a permanent point of interaction the unity of which I speak and call for. And I ask you as I leave this podium to recognize that we too in the Caribbean want to see you. Indeed, in my own country in Barbados, we will celebrate the Caribbean Festival of Arts, the 15th CariFesta, from August 22nd to August 31st. And we do so not only asking for those from Cuba and Bahamas in the north, to Venezuela, to Suriname and Guyana in the south, to Belize in the West and the Eastern Caribbean to come together to express our commitment to each other creatively through food and fashion and music and dance and art and sculpture, and talk of philosophy, talk of religion, talk of who we are, talk of the future. I ask us to recognize that we celebrate this year our resilience, and that we do so not only asking the people of the Caribbean to come, but the people from whom we came here in Africa, in India, in China, and the continent to which we went, in particular in Central America and Latin America. This is our moment to show the world that we were not simply apostrophes to the history and the modern history of humanity, but that truly we are the ones who can level the playing field and to create the opportunities that will allow the world to see people, hear people, and feel people, and to value the planet and its biodiversity at the very time when it is greatest in crisis. Let us remove the scars of history and be firm craftsmen of our fate, recognizing that the only people who can stop us now are we but ourselves. We have to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery and to build the future that our people want of us and to give them that pride that is theirs. And we must do so in the spirit and with the results of Adwa. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a brilliant speech by Prime Minister of Barbados, Mio Amora Mottley. Powerful speech, and I will seal it off with a clip with something that she mentioned in her speech of His Majesty and the spirit of Adwa. And after the war, His Majesty said, David, if it happened today, David, I'm not sure how he put it, but I will put the video at the end here about how David would still beat Goliath. Yeah.
It is good that you are here to record this picture of me in my palace garden at Addis Ababa. People who see this throughout the world will realize that even in the 20th century, with faith, courage, and a just cause, David will still beat Goliath.
And the United Nations a breathing spell in which to act. The goal of the equality of man, which we seek, is the very antithesis of the exploitation of one people by another, about which the pages of history, particularly those written about the African and Asian continents, speak at such length. Last May in Addis Ababa, there was convened a meeting of heads of African states and governments. For 3 days, the 32 nations represented at that conference demonstrated to the world that when the will and the determination exist, nations and peoples of various backgrounds can and will work together in unity, the achievement of common goals in the assurance of that equality and brotherhood which we desire. Although our position vis-à-vis the power blocks is identified with the policy of non-alignment, our past history testifies to the fact that we've always endeavored to cooperate with all nations without exception. Thus, one of the fundamental principles we have agreed upon at the Addis Ababa Summit Conference gives expression to our fundamental desire to live in harmony and cooperation with all states. On the question of racial discrimination, the Addis Ababa conference taught to those who will learn this further lesson that until the ignoble and unhappy regimes that hold our brothers in Angola, in Mozambique and in South Africa in subhuman bondage have been toppled and destroyed, until bigotry and prejudice, malicious and inhuman self-interest have been replaced by understanding and tolerance and goodwill, until all Africans stand up and speak as free human beings, equal in the eyes of all men, as they are in the eyes of heaven, until that day, the African continent will not know peace. We Africans will fight if necessary, and we know that we shall win, as we are confident in the victory of good over evil. The basis of racial discrimination and colonialism has been economic. And it is with economic weapons that these evils have been and can be overcome.
To the thing, people are not subscribed. Please subscribe. And